Welcome to the Wandering Tangent Podcast. I'm mostly BJ, I don't know where my brain is. With me is Jeff and Gary, who are more present in Counterpart than I am, and today we are gonna have some kind of discussion because our starting point, I guess, is the 1990 monster film Tremors, which we apparently think very highly of.
We do.
Yes.
We do. We all gave it high scores.
Not as high as my wife does. This is a solid 5 for her, but or if you had given this a bad review, BJ, she would have dropped it down to a 4.75 just to spite you. But that's not.
I'm not gonna lie, I was like, I wouldn't say half expecting, but I thought there was a non-zero chance that Jeff was going to give this a negative score because...
Really?
You gave a positive score to the green slime, Jeff. Anything is possible.
It is... It does always seem like at least one of us throws the score off just a little bit. We're fairly consistent with this one, but other times, looking at you, Jeff, for last time...
There was too much orange goo in this for it to have a negative score. The orange goo alone means that it had to be positive.
But yes, during the review, in case audience at home didn't notice, we kind of made a pledge to each other that as part of the review process, we are supposed to do our best not to interrupt each other's reviews. And
because we do that a lot.
Yes, indeed we do. And Jeff started saying, and I recommend everyone should watch all the Tremors movies, and I had to bite my tongue very hard.
Yes.
Though, to be fair, I think I've only seen, like, one of the sequels all the way through, and, like, half another one. I think I'm gonna look up a list of the sequels.
So what I like about the sequels is that they are campy. This is a very campy story, and as they made the sequels, they capitalized on the campy quality because none of them are high budget movies. The newer ones I haven't seen, so those could be different. But very few cast members, lots of monsters, and an excuse to either go to the monsters or find them again. It's fun. Go ahead.
So my thing is, and again, what makes, in my opinion, one of the things that makes the first Tremors movie so good is that, yes, it is campy, but it doesn't really cross the line to over camp. And
I agree.
And I feel like the sequels kind of do.
True. No, you are right on with that.
I mean, like...
Also, this first one seems... There's a certain grounding, like everything that it establishes early on, kind of plays out in the movie. Whereas I think they lose that with the sequels, in my opinion. Well,
the sequels are definitely lower quality, definitely. And in terms of the special effects, it goes down. They get even. You can just feel the budget was small. It was shrinking with every film.
Well, They stopped doing at some point, they basically stopped doing the big worms and like, oh, the creatures are evolving, like the big worms like hatch and like small things that can like walk on rocks, whatever. And then like they start to like fly or something.
Yeah, the reveal is that the worm creatures are actually a larva state. They have different forms that they then mutate into, which helps them migrate. Because you can think, like, a worm creature is very limited as to where it can travel. It can't travel through any ground that is just too coarse or too rocky. So then it can walk around and find other places and find more food. But then it can then fly and go over obstacles like hills, mountains, anything like that. So in a way, I know it's as cheesy as can be, like, oh no, they can fly now. Who thought that they could fly? But there is a kind of quirky brilliance to it that it's a creature with many different stages of development, which happens in nature. You know, creatures have different stages in order to reproduce. This one
Okay,
has three though instead of two. Which
yes,
go ahead.
and again, to come back to the question of camp and over camp, we,
Yes.
as a group of people who choose not to swear, we cannot even name what they call the ones that fly.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is campy. The flying ones, everything is campy. And I agree with you guys. This movie is really the one that is the more grounded monster movie. It's humorous, but it's not, might have a little bit of a campy quality, but not really overly done. In fact, it's a lot of the things in the movie lean more towards plausibility.
It takes itself seriously enough and is also lighthearted enough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
And-
it
sorry,
kind
go
of it kind of establishes nothing that happens in the movie really escapes the nature of the movie itself, right?
Yes.
It's like, for instance, at the very beginning, you mentioned in your review how many people were in it. It actually shows that in the beginning, right? It shows the name of the town and then the population, which is like 14. And then if you account for the visiting university, Rona, if you account for her,
Rhonda.
and
Rhonda.
Rhonda. Sorry.
Hang on.
Sorry.
Gary, did you make that joke on purpose or
What?
because that exact same bit happens in the movie?
What? Rhonda?
Yes.
Not intentionally, but I guess it's kind of funny that way.
It just organically happens.
Okay.
So
adding plausibility to the movie. Good job.
if you account for her and then the other two, like, it's a very tiny cast when you're considering, you know, how many people can be in movies, even at the time or these days. It's a very, you know, well tight-knit cast, and you understand why each of these people is kind of there, right?
Yeah. Yes, it is a small isolated community that feels like a small isolated community.
Yeah. You got to wonder, you know, so some of them you're just like, okay, so why? Obviously the handymen are there because people, you know, need somebody to do all the little odd jobs.
They're basically the backbone of that community because they do, They're the laborers that go around doing everything because you can't get any kind of services out there. There's just two handymen and they do everything. And they don't, I mean, I think they have a trailer, but they usually sleep out in their truck and they don't even bother to go home, apparently.
I think they go home when they need to take a shower, which you can account for happening at least once in this movie. Shortly after a certain, or what was it, the septic tank they were draining?
Yeah,
something like that.
It sprays all over them, and they, you know, take a shower for obvious reasons.
But they're characters you can really empathize with because they're the downtrodden group, and they're two normal guys. They're not like action hero people. They're more like just their goal in life is to sit on the couch. Like, they're doing this handiwork because they need money, but really they're not the go out and be heroes kind of guys. And yet this whole situation comes upon them.
And they have to rise up to become the heroes.
I was going to say they do rise to the occasion.
Yeah. That's part of the character arc, is that they find within themselves that they are committed problem solvers, and they have a sense of bravery and commitment to each other, and they're good problem solvers. That's what they figure out. Like, it's not just about running away and hiding. You've got to problem solve. You got to think of options, and that's what they do.
I mean, and in this movie, you even have the archetypal type person who would be the hero. the survivalist guy, Bert, right? He, by all accounts, in any other movie, in any other situation, he would be the one who's the hero because
Right.
he's the action guy. He knows how to use the
I
guns.
was going to say, in fact, I do believe he is the hero in most of the sequels. I think
he's in everything. Like, they have his character through the entire franchise, the whole thing.
Yeah, I think Earl came back for the first sequel, and a handful of the other characters came back for at least I assume because
yes. So
because the Tremors 3 is called Back to Perfection, so I assume there's some recurring characters there.
Yes, so and I can explain it very brief synopsis, if you will, but in this, and I will be limited on spoilers, but I will give a few details.
Yes, Jeff.
I'll keep it mostly spoiler free.
Please keep this. Yes, Jeff. Please do not spoil the in-depth, or well, I guess I shouldn't say that because I've not seen it all the way through, but I'm sure the plot of Tremors 3 Back to Perfection is complex and in-depth.
Yeah, very complex. Well, it is kind of funny. So they in the second one, these tremor creatures, or graboids as they are called, they're sighted in this valley down in Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a petroleum company that needs somebody to take them on.
I've seen the second one.
Yes, and Earl is a guy that's just, once again, despite all the money he's gotten, he's landed with an ostrich farm that is just a money waste. It's just a money pit. And so they get him to go and do this and that whole plot. And then they bring Bert in. That's the whole thing. And then Bert, who gets divorced, has a very messy divorce, but he...
Probably because they couldn't afford to bring Reba McEntire back.
Probably. I mean, she is a very famous singer, and she sings one of the songs for the soundtrack at the end. I noticed that when I heard it. I'm like, that's the one.
Like, I don't think Kevin Bacon came back for any of the sequels either. I think they do they say that Val and Rhonda end up getting married at some point?
Yes. Yeah, they get married. They have a happily ever after storyline, and they never go back to perfection because, of course, they're just off living a better life, and everyone like capitalizes off of it. They try to do publicity stuff. They do articles for magazines, and they try to get money from this event, which becomes very famous. So they're all happy. Earl just doesn't do well, but he finds love in the second movie, and then he goes off and he's in his happily ever after. Whereas Bert has a very different storyline where he goes on this almost life quest to always destroy and hunt down and to destroy the graboids. And he's incredibly anti-civilization, so he ends up in the jungle later trying to get away from all of the paranoid stuff of the world. And he just keeps on getting pulled into another graboid adventure. But the funniest thing, there's also a Western one. Like in the fourth movie, they go back in time. Apparently, these graboids existed in the late 1800s when it was a silver mine.
Tremors 4, the legend begins.
Yeah, so there's that one. And he plays a very different character there. Apparently, Bert's ancestor also lived in perfection. So, yeah, I guess that somehow that ties in. But in the third one, it's funny because he managed... The graboids just come back to perfection. And they come back at a time where real estate companies are trying to buy up the land and develop it. And so what Bert does is he decides to leave one of the graboids alive and just kind of like let him go through the valley just to keep the real estate companies out. Because as long as he's there, then he gets to remove the bigger threat to him, which is civilization, because he's incredibly paranoid about everything. So he gets to keep his valley, and they have scanners that track him, this little graboid. So they just have to like live with the creature, but they get to keep the developers out. Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny. Yeah, but he becomes this really well-written character. And Bert goes on. Some of the characters, some of the same cast members are back in the third one. But then after that, it's mostly just Michael Gross, who plays Bert,
Ooh,
who's going on this long adventure of, he goes to the Arctic, he goes to the jungles, he just goes all over the place. Anyway,
I mean,
that's my synopsis.
I guess you might as well hand it to the guy. He did make an entire career of one character in one movie series.
Yeah, and before this, he was also famous. They actually hired him because he was a famous actor. They thought, we need somebody famous in this movie. Let's hire Michael Gross. and the producers were like, but he was from a sitcom where he plays this very like down-to-earth dad. And then to throw him into this role is completely different than what he had previously done. But he plays it really well. He plays it. He kind of like does a bit of an eccentric, or what words am I using? Yeah, he just gets into the role. Eccentric performance. Yeah, yeah. It works. It works.
I do have to wonder about him as a character. Like, it... Okay. The thing that... And this kind of sticks out to me because it's part of a scene that kind of defines him as a character. When the graboid breaks into his rec room, right? And him and his wife basically shoot the thing to death. So there's all kinds of guns there, and most of them make sense for various...
I was going to say, it's one of the great reveals of the movie, is that it sort of pans over and shows their gun wall.
Yeah.
I know. Such a good sequence. Yeah.
And that gun wall is, if a person is dedicated to guns and they have a semi-decent job and they really, are that is their hobby, then they can get a wall similar to this, right? Maybe they probably wouldn't store the ammo right next to it because that's just stupid. But anyways.
I was going to say, it seems like they store some of the guns loaded, but...
Yeah.
Well, they're survivalists, so
yeah,
they're
a
special kind of gun owner. They're not your normal, typical gun owner. They think the world is coming to destroy them, and they are prepared for it.
I do have to question the inclusion of one particular weapon, right? The elephant gun. I know you have to be prepared for every situation, but what kind of situation involves the necessity of an elephant gun? And it's not just the idea of, okay, I need to be prepared for everything. It's the fact that that particular gun sold by Wesley Richards is the kind of weapon that... It's not the kind of weapon that a person with a decent... I said that a person with a decent job and having, a particular dedication could probably have a wall like this, but not with that gun on it. That gun is the kind of weapon that a person who is much more refined would take to, to take to a situation. A person who, Wesley Richards is the kind of company that if you have to ask how much their products are worth, you don't have enough money to buy them. So what is Bert doing with one of those things on his wall?
Well, sometimes when you're a collector, you kind of splurge a little and get a very nice piece, right?
Well, that's what's unique about Bert. He's not just a survivalist. He's a survivalist who is a bit crazy and eccentric and just is kind of wild. And it's funny because his eccentricness is normally crazy and absurd, but then it becomes so useful because of this absurd situation that happens.
And to be fair, I don't think they ever really say what Bert and Heather do for a living. They're just these crazy preppers who have this bunker out in the middle of nowhere. Except they're not that crazy because all the townspeople like them too. So, I don't know.
Well, they're friendly. They're friendly and community oriented, and the wife is a lot more rational. Bert is kind of he's kind of has this enormous hubris about himself as being this incredible survival guy, but his wife is a lot more normal and tame, but she's also a survivalist. She's a major weapons expert. When you hear her talk about guns, it's like, yeah, she is also a prepper, definitely.
I do have one. I do have one sort of technical question. I figure if anyone knows, it would probably be Gary.
Okay.
So in the scene before the I want to call it the worms have the graboid because graboid is just really dumb. Before the
That's
monster
kind of the point.
comes through the wall,
Mm-hmm.
what do they put like shells or shell casings into like some sort of tumbler machine? Are they like cleaning the brass?
Yeah, exactly.
What is that?
They're cleaning the brass and they're getting it ready so that they can reload it.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. I'm like,
yeah, you don't take a
like, what is
scrub
this
brush
machine?
to that sort of thing. It's little. They're trying to get all of the loose powder and whatnot out of the interior of the brass, and then they'll replace the primers and the powder and the shot.
Okay,
the bullet.
Okay, I kind of thought it out right before I said, but I figured I'd ask because I had already started asking. So.
Yeah, no, it's being able to reload is a fairly common thing amongst preppers because it's
way cheaper.
And also just people in general who are into shooting a lot, being able to reload your brass is kind of a I don't know.
It fits into the do-it-yourself mentality.
Yeah, it fits into the do-it-yourself. There's also the concept of, because I knew one guy who liked to reload the stuff himself because he could control the quality.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a mass manufacturer, they sometimes don't have exactly the same amount of powder. Or you get powder.
Yeah.
They don't have this exact same amount of powder inside the bullet or inside the shell every time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which will really throw off the shot.
Yeah. So he can control exactly how much goes in. He can, buy higher quality rounds to press into it. Like he can. His hand loaded stuff is what he saved for when he wants to do some really high end shots, right?
Mm.
So it was kind of it wasn't just a mark of pride or a mark of reliability. It was also, when you need to take the shot, going out that far, you need to get your best bullets to do it and that sort of thing. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's a whole thing, but and the fact that it's cheaper than buying new ammunition is also the side benefit to that.
I mean, maybe not. Maybe not as much back then, but I would say more. But then we would start getting political.
If you're firing as much, and I imagine that Bert and what was his wife's name again?
Heather.
Yeah, Bert and Heather probably firing guns on a fairly regular basis. I imagine, especially given that area, the people of the valley are fairly familiar with the sound of gunfire, and they're like, oh, it must be. I imagine they have a scheduled day that they do it, especially if Bert's buying ammunition regularly from Wong. That was Wong, right?
Yeah. Or, at least according to Wikipedia. Victor
Walter.
Wong.
Walter.
The character's Walter Chang. The actor is Victor Wong.
Yeah.
Okay. Victor Wong. Okay, yeah. I got them mixed up.
The guy from Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, that guy. So if he's buying if he's buying ammunition from him on a regular basis, then that means he must be using that ammunition on a regular basis. So,
Does your wife just like movies that he's in?
it might be that he was in a lot of movies from that era. I don't know.
What else is he in? Does your wife also enjoy the Three Ninja movies?
I don't know. I don't know that I've ever seen that.
What are the Three Ninja movies? What are we talking about here? Is there one called The Three Ninjas?
Yes.
Oh.
There's Three Ninjas Kick Back, and Three Ninjas High Noon at Mega Mountain.
Oh.
They are kids films where the titular three ninjas are in fact youngish children.
Oh,
never mind. There are 4 Three Ninja movies. I missed one. I missed Three Ninjas Knuckle Up.
Yeah, I don't think she's ever heard of those movies, and okay. I don't know that she would appreciate them. She kind of appreciates creature features, which this one fits into. That also fits the description of Big Trouble in Little China in a way. So,
I mean, there are creatures in Big Trouble in Little China. I don't know if I would call it a creature feature.
Yeah, that one is stretching it a little, but she appreciates that movie regardless.
So
yes, that's one weird thing. Start. Yeah, go ahead.
One weird thing that I thought is the doctor in the town. Mm-hmm. They find one of these guys. There was actually whole scenes with Edgar, the guy who's up on the power lines, hiding up there. There were scenes about him they cut out of the movie. He was like the first guy to. It was a whole thing, but basically they discover him, and so they take him to a doctor. And he's not like an official coroner or anything like that. He's just a doctor that is close by that happens to be moving into the area. And so they bring him there. I just thought you really get a sense that this town really just doesn't have any kind of infrastructure. There's not even any county presence. You have to go all the way up to this other town nearby for anything like that.
Yeah, I was going to say when they try to contact the authorities and like the phone's down, they like have to, someone in the place has to like go and like actually travel to the next nearest town because there's
only
no
one
law
phone line.
Yeah, there's like no law enforcement presence or anything like that.
Yeah, it's really, really remote, and they can have a store. There's a store that exists there. And you gotta wonder, like, how can this store even exist with 14 customers? But I mean, that's not important. The important part is that it's incredibly isolated, which makes
it's probably not a lot of overhead, I would think, but
that's true.
And anyway,
a lot of overhead, and the prices are higher, and yeah. But the town is friendly. They're friendly people. They help each other out, and it's this tight little community. And I guess there's a woman who is an artist. They never discuss her background, but she's this really nice lady, has a daughter, and she's an artist. She makes pots, and she sells them. So there must be some sort of courier that comes through once in a while, and she can like send her pots somewhere.
Either that or she drives them into the other town for sale.
Yeah, that's true. She could do that too.
It seems like because she seems like the archetypical like single mother. Not a lot of story behind why she doesn't have a husband, but presumably that happened fairly recently because given the presence of the daughter. But it does seem like she's found a nice place to settle, to get away from everything. It seems like everybody in this valley seems to want to get away from something, except for Bert or
Val.
Val and
Earl.
Val and Earl. They seem to have ended there. They seem to be there because they have a reason to be there because they people need them.
Yeah,
In some way, shape, or form.
they might have wanted to go there at some point and to do handyman cowboy work. But then as time goes on, they're obviously they're ready for something else. There's also one of the characters, Miguel. He's a rancher. So he's got some property and some cows. So he's there making a living.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the young girl, she's in the third movie. She turns out to be a teenager who kind of is bored with everything, but they bring her back. And the other boy, they have an annoying kid who just bothers everyone. Definitely is a kid who doesn't really have much sense for anything.
I'll say, I think that's one of the great mysteries of this movie that they don't really go over, is that who does Melvin belong to?
Yeah, that is a good question.
I think Melvin, and here's my theory. Nestor, I think
Nestor, yeah.
I think Nestor is related to Melvin in some way, shape, or form. Maybe an uncle, and Melvin's parents have this place out there, by Nestor, and they sent Melvin to go live in their place out there because he's just so obnoxious, and he's just the worst. And so they sent him out there, probably in the summer, to be like, okay, you go live out there with your uncle in the summer, and then you come back in the fall and go back to school or whatever. And that's my theory of why Melvin is where he is and why he's doing what he's doing. I don't know.
It's a hard... that is a good theory. It's hard to really say. Who does he really belong to? It never makes that clear.
Which is fine, I guess you kind of needed an annoying teenage character in that day and age, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and then the monsters like terrify him, which is kind of retribution. You get to see that.
Yeah, and he's the fact that he's one of the characters that doesn't get eaten is kind of one of those, like, I guess that makes sense in some way, shape, or form. There's no justice, but you kind of understand that there's no justice.
Well, do you really want violence against children, Gary?
He's a teenager in this one, and he's probably actually an adult he was probably actually an adult in real life, just playing a young teenager.
No, he looked really young. I think he was, I don't know.
But he was just obnoxious. But anyways.
He comes back in the third movie, only he's one of the real estate developers. And so he's annoying again in the third one. And Bert plays a trick on him and traps him on a rock, the graboid. So he gets his more comeuppance.
Yeah. I was kind of... There was moments in the movie that you could kind of relate to. One that stuck out to me was that moment and it's one of those where it's not just a little bit of action. It's just this. It doesn't seem like a heroic thing per se, but when Mindy is hopping along on her pogo stick, and they've all realized that regular sounds are the thing that draws in the graboids or the monsters, and Kevin Bacon's character just takes off at full speed. And I was just thinking at the time when I was watching that is an exhausting run. But sometimes you don't do that kind of run just for anything, right? You do that run because you have a reason. And, the fact that he's willing to not only run into danger, risk his life, but, it's relatable though, because, he's saving the life of a little girl. It's very natural, but still, it's just like this. It's not as heroic as when he drives a pickaxe into one, it's not as heroic as like, it's not like when they're throwing bombs at the things, or when, Bert shoots them with it, shoots the one up with a gun, but he's got nothing. He's just charging in to go save the little girl, running at full sprint, and
all the character actions make sense. There's no, hey gang, let's split up. I'm going to go check out this dark barn.
Yeah.
That 3 other people have walked into and not come out of. No one come after me, okay?
Yeah. It's little girls running along, and there's like, oh no, someone needs to go save her, and he just takes off.
Right, and they establish she likes to go out with the pogo stick and keep track of how many times she can do it in a row. So it's established that that's a normal thing for her. And that then they have their tense moment. It's like, oh no, she's out there. She has no idea of the danger. And yeah, it's good. It's good.
She's on a pogo stick with one of those newfangled Walkman, so she can't hear.
Yeah. So the love story in this is unique in that the Kevin Bacon character, Val, he has this iconic idea of what he wants in a girl. And so he gets really excited to meet this girl from the university, and it turns out she's so different than his ideal. She's not the kind of girl that he would be interested in at all. And he has a character arc where he begins to realize that that kind of thing is dumb. And they bond over time, and they form a relationship. And she likes how innovative he tends to be. Even though he's a lonely worker, he's definitely got a sense of problem solving about him. And then she's intelligent, and he's able to see that. And so it breaks his stereotype of the kind of girl he wants.
To make things as nerdy as humanly possible, I guess, he has a high wisdom score stat, shall we say, instead of a high intelligence.
Yeah.
Difference between intelligence and wisdom in D&D. Okay. Yes, I'm a nerd. We've established this a long time ago.
And it's kind of interesting with these two actors. The chemistry is there, and you can see the moment when he falls in love with her, and the moment that she falls in love with him. My wife made mention of this one, and I kind of agree with her. When she grabs the long pole and goes pole vaulting, you can see it in his eyes. It's just like, oh gosh, no. Now I've fallen for this woman who doesn't fit my category at all, right? And then I think the moment that I would say that she falls in love with him comes quite a bit later in the movie, when he's tending to her wounds, and she looks, it kind of hurts, and he's like saying sorry, and it's just kind of like this weird, odd little moment, and you can see the look in her eyes, and she's just like feeling like this is a tender moment where they're, kind of bonding. And then she looks over, and you see
Earl.
Yeah, you see Earl, and he's just looking at them both, and he's like, he could see this one from a mile away. He saw this long before either one of them, came to this realization. And she's like a little uncomfortable with the fact that this guy is like...
There were scenes where Earl is trying to play matchmaker that they cut out of the script. They originally they wanted him to kind of be a go-between between the two. But I actually think it's good that they cut all that out, because it happens just more naturally, and he just kind of like looks at it from afar and smirks. It's better that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course the end of it, where he has to check on the truck, and he's not actually checking on the truck. He's just walking away to give them a moment, and then they don't do it, and then he slams the lid, and it's like, Val is like, I'm working on it. I'm working my way up. And you just like, that's how this would play out. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're
He's
they're
like,
understandable characters. You can totally understand how they feel.
and he's like saying muttering to himself the entire way, "What's she want with a man like me? She's going after a PhD."
Yep. So he becomes the underdog. She is higher above him in status. So she's not the typical girl that he would go for, yet she has a higher status in other ways.
Yeah.
And yeah, but then she likes him because even though he's this lonely worker, he's also a cowboy. He's got qualities and he's resourceful and caring. So you get they're very much different people, but they come together for as a unique couple. Yes, and they go on happily ever after, and I assume mostly because of her career, because she's the one that is probably going places and
I imagine
stuff.
I imagine he's fairly useful, like for if she needs to do field work or something.
He probably is useful. Yeah.
People like him know how to do things, and
Yeah.
I imagine given a chance, which definitely the post this situation would definitely present, he would probably be doing a lot more than just putting up fences or pumping sewage.
Yeah. Well, the character Rhonda in the third movie, they talk about her. She apparently spent a few years studying the graboids and then wrote several books that were like big sellers. So they're well off. Like they made tons of money off of this. And yeah. So, but they're definitely both too expensive for the the sequels. So they get this happily ever after story and they move on. Yeah.
You obviously can't afford Kevin Bacon for sequels. I don't know, maybe if you really wanted to push it, you could try to do it now, but I don't know. I think he's still worth way more than what they would be able to pay him.
I don't even know if Kevin Bacon's like still acting anymore, is he?
He does bit parts.
Like, and
I don't know.
Like the last thing I know he was in like the, what's it called? The Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special where he played himself.
After you make lots of money, I mean, do you really need to be in a lot of stuff?
No.
At that point, you just
Unless
like
you spend
show
it
up
all.
at Comic-Cons or something. Unless you spend it all, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes actors aren't money people, shocker there, but sometimes they turn a career into something, but
that's why you hire an accountant.
yes, a good accountant who stops you from spending all of your money on stupid things.
Like
yeah, well, I know,
farms.
like ostrich farms, which is part of the
Which
funny
brings us
thing.
back around.
I love that some of them just like Earl had this grand idea and he spent tons of money on an ostrich farm thinking that ostriches would be this new big thing, and it totally flopped. It's comical. There's some realism to it.
Yeah, I don't remember most of the second movie. Like the only scene I really remember is like after the worms start to hatch, I guess, into the ones that can like run around. They're like holed up in like this refinery or something, and like Bert comes back, and like part of the payment for Bert is that they had to outfit him with like this big truck and like all this stuff.
They
and
got
like,
to have whatever they wanted from the Mexican army.
yeah,
The Mexican army just gave them whatever it is they asked for.
yeah. So Bert comes back and like his truck is like barely running, and he like gets out of the what's it called, the cab, and he's like covered like a monster goo, goes off in this prolonged rant about how he had to kill all these things. He's like, I am out of ammunition. It's never happened to me before.
Yeah, Bert's a funny character. Yes, they have a scene where they figure out that they're now running around. They've turned into these raptor-like creatures. And there's a scene where he's being ambushed in the night and he's making video logs because of course he's Bert. Like he's larger than life. That's how he sees himself.
He was a YouTuber before YouTube was a thing.
Yeah, exactly. And they just show him getting ambushed, and then later on this truck is just like covered and there's bullet holes everywhere. He was shooting from inside the cab and there's bullets all over the windshield. So he's like spraying, trying to defend his truck, and he runs over most of them. Yeah, it's funny. And of course the actor Michael Gross just like totally plays up the drama of it. It's like, nobody told me.
Drama in air quotes.
Drama in air quotes. I had seriously less intel than I needed. Yeah. And they give him a gun. Like in almost every movie, he has a gun that's just way overpowered. And in this second one, he shoots a graboid with this like 50 caliber rifle.
It's
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gary. I think you're
it
about
might
to
be
say
more
same
than
thing.
50 caliber. I don't know. It's huge
a specialized anti-tank gun. Anti-material weapon. I think he was aiming for something that had even more penetration than an elephant gun, which is ridiculous.
Which would make sense, actually. Yeah.
But from a point of view of a person who wanted to be ready for something that was underground or behind armor or underground behind armor or they show you in the movie the penetrative power of that particular weapon, and it's it's not a little bit of penetration. It's a lot.
Yeah, so he shoots through the walking graboid, then the wall behind it, and then all of these barrels, and then it goes through another structure, and then finally it hits the engine block of their getaway vehicle. And that's
about what one of those things would do.
And they establish in this movie that the graboids are to some extent actually bulletproof. They have this really thick skin, and you could imagine growing through the ground, they need an exoskeleton of some sort that is incredibly strong. It's so strong that it is not bullet resistant to every kind of bullet, but it's like they were shooting it with a lot of rounds and it was still alive. A lot of the rounds were just sticking inside of its skin and weren't really penetrating until they got something much bigger.
We are assuming at least they don't really like go in depth that much after the basement shootout scene.
Yeah, the particular weapon that he uses, that elephant gun, it's meant for big game like that. It's penetrative. Yeah, elephants. So the penetration power of most weapons is measured in like inches or feet. That's like inches and feet of particular material. I think sandbags. Anyways, elephant guns are measured. Their penetrative power is measured in yards. So, just to kind of show you the difference in capability. And then I'm not even going to speculate on the penetrative power of the anti-tank gun in the second movie, because that thing was just ridiculous.
So this might bring the conversation to a grinding halt if you guys have not heard of this guy. Are you guys familiar with Kentucky Ballistics?
I have heard of him. I have not actually watched any of his work, but I have heard of him. I think he likes really big stuff.
Yes.
I haven't heard of this at all.
Okay. In that case, we're not going to go into that subject, I guess.
You don't want me to know too much.
How about Townsend's? How can we fit Townsend's into this?
I do know Townsend's. That's a great channel.
Townsend's. I don't know how Townsend's would fit with this, but he's kind of
we're ready to talk about it anyway.
I just bring up Townsend's because I know that's a YouTuber that we are all familiar with.
Of course we would all be familiar with Townsend's. That's just the kind of nerds we are.
Well, I forget what the context was, but we had talked about Townsend's in the past, so that's why I brought that up, because I'm like, I'll bring in the ringer.
Yeah, so that's pretty much all the things I was going to talk about. So,
I'm good. It's a good movie. Lots
good
of fun.
movie.
Excellent.
Highly recommended. You guys have your opinions on the sequels. I will keep my opinion of the sequels to myself.
Oh, Gary, give us one little.
You don't want to offend us.
I think it took a nosedive off a cliff after this one, so that's just my personal opinion. But
at some point, did I give you the impression that I thought the sequels were good? Me saying I had seen 1.5, which kind of implied that I had watched one and half of another, and not even the entirety of the half. Jeff was the one recommending them.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't seen them all. I need to see the sixth one,
then why
the
did
latest one.
Then why did you?
Why did I recommend them? Because they're just because of the character Bert. That alone. I mean, that's why you want to watch the sequels, is just for that character.
You're asking people to watch 5 bad movies? Is it 6 movies in?
I do this all the time.
A number of bad movies, which you have not even seen.
Yes.
One of my goals.
What are you going to say to that, BJ? What are you going to say to that?
Was to be nice to Jeff, but he makes it hard sometimes.
Yeah.
They're probably good. Especially the one in the Arctic, where he goes up to the Arctic. I need to watch that one.
I would hesitate to say that they are probably good.
Well, it depends on our definition of good.
Probably
which
good.
That word is a big subject, and it can have very varying meanings.
Optimistic outlook, like the first sequel is decent, I guess. It's not unwatchable.
Yeah, so you only watch them for the campy quality. You don't watch it for any other kind of reason.
I actually only watched the sequel because there wasn't anything else on. I actually watched it while I was on vacation once, and I got a very bad sunburn on my legs after we went river rafting, and my family wanted to go hiking. We were in Moab, and they're like, we're going to go hike up to the Elkin Arch. I'm like, my legs hurt, so I'm not. I'm going to stay in a hotel room with cold compresses on my leg. And apparently the motel cable wasn't great, because the only thing I found even remotely watchable was Tremors 2. And I was like, hope my family doesn't come back to those movies over, because it'll be really embarrassing if they come back and this is what I'm watching.
Yeah, Tremors 2 is all right. Tremors 3 is when it really got low budget. Yeah.
I like how Jeff says low budget instead of bad.
The very different meanings. Very different.
Yeah, I think the third one's the one I watched part of. I'm like, I'm not going to watch the rest of this. I found the older I get, the better I am at letting things go. I used to force myself to like say I started reading the book, it was a bad book. I'm like, okay, I'm like halfway through this book, I'm going to finish reading this book just so I could say I did. Nowadays I'm like, okay, I'm like a quarter way through this book, I don't like it, move on. Lost the drive, the just complete things for completion's sake. Like this train of thought. It's not a good train of thought, so I'm just going to stop it here.
You have to complete it, BJ.
No.
You got to get to the end.
No.
Whatever the end was or
No.
is, it was important.
Barely not, because I forgot where I was going.
Speaking of ends.
Gary's
like, speaking of ending.
I tried this once, so I'm going to try it again.
You have to be...
Yeah.
You have to be
Good
obvious
movie.
with us, Gary.
Good movie. And I don't have much else to say about this, so why don't we wrap it up?
In conclusion, Gary would like to conclude.
Yes.
Go ahead, Gary. Make a conclusion. And then we'll
I have concluded that I said all I was going to say. It's a good movie. You should go watch it.
Who's the murderer, Gary?
Who's the murderer? Who done it?
Who
I
does?
It was the one-armed man.
I believe they're called graboids.
It was-
Snakeoids. No, oids. Oids. We gotta think of that. Graboids.
It was
That is such a good scene. We'll call
Yeah.
them crapoids.
it was Victor Wong in Chinatown with the flask of whatever the heck the flask was called.
Seven spirits.
Do
Many
things no one
spirits?
else can do. See things no one else can see.
Any side effects?
Big buzz. Ugh.
Well, join us next time.
One of the side effects of the podcast, getting Gary annoyed because we won't stop. I'm BJ. With me was Jeff and Gary. Join us next time for something or other, I'm sure. We'll see you then, I guess. Bye.